Hey everybody, I hope you all are doing well and welcome back to Michael's Matters. Now, of course, I'm Michael, and this week we have some very interesting numbers out from the BLS, that is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, about where inflation is and potentially where inflation is going. That is going to give us a much better idea of how folks on Social Security benefits, so that could be Social Security Retirement, which is, of course, the largest block of folks out there, but also Social Security Disability SSDI, Supplemental Security Income SSA, survivors, spousal benefits, and really all the other iterations of the Social Security program. So it'll give us more clues about where the Social Security increase through the COLA will be for this year, or I guess for next year, and also where it should be, or at least where it needs to be right now to keep up with the cost of living that seniors have. So today we are covering the newest inflation numbers and what they could mean for folks on Social Security benefits and talking about where they should be. Now, this is Michael's Matters, and before we get to the video, if you like these videos, if you find them interesting, if you find them helpful, hey, if you at least find them useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe, because it does really help the channel to grow. And of course, we are so thankful for that, but also because it means you'll get notifications when our newest, most informative videos become available. All right, now let's get down to the video. All right, so starting off today, let's get a baseline of where things are in the country as far as inflation goes. And so let's talk about the general overall inflation numbers, which just came out recently here, which shows that for the month of January, which is the most recent month that we have, the rate of the overall inflation has sort of shifted directions, with a shallow drop from 3.4% in December down to 3.1% in January, which kind of puts us right back to where we were at as of November 2023. So it's more of like December was a temporary bump. But the biggest reasons for this overall decrease, and we'll call it a decrease in January, was really just because of the drop in gasoline prices. So when we look at all the costs, a lot of times they strip out food and gasoline because they are volatile. But in this instance, we are including gasoline in there. And because gasoline prices have dropped and have also been sort of fortified by the fact that the United States is pumping more oil into the system than imaginable, than it has really in the last couple of years, the gas prices are lowering. Now, I'm not saying this is because of an upcoming election, because, sure, people do love their low gas prices, me included, especially here in California. Every little bit helps. But the overall drop in gas prices was at 14.2%, which definitely is nice, but still for other costs like housing, food, and shelter, all that had increased from the previous months. In fact, shelter increased a bit of a worrying percentage of 6%, because even though it is a lower percentage, I think most of us spend more money on our housing than we do on our gasoline. Now, overall, I would say that this is sort of good news, bad news for older Americans, seniors, and retirees on Social Security benefits, because really, I mean, any month that the overall inflation rate, overall, all averaged out together, is lower than that 3.2% increase that folks got in January through their cost of living adjustment for their Social Security benefits, means that those dollars are going to have a little bit more purchasing power. They've been over boosted just a tiny bit, and eases a bit of the cost that those folks have in their daily costs. Also, I'm in the camp that believes that lower inflation, even if it means a $0 COLA, is better than the alternative, which would be a higher inflation and a higher COLA increase. Now, even though the CPI-U will give us a pretty good idea, a generalist view of how inflation affects the economy, and thus, the U.S. in the wide view, a bit more specific metrics that we need to look at for Social Security beneficiaries specifically is the CPI-W, which is known as the Consumer Price Index for the urban wage earners. And the main reason this is important is because it is the metric that is actually used by Social Security to be able to set up that cost of living adjustment increase every single year. So that means that when the CPI-W is high on average, this COLA, that cost of living adjustment increase, is also high. Inversely, when the CPI-W is lower, the cost of living adjustments are going to end up lower for that future year. And thus, it means that it is the main indicator of whether or not Social Security beneficiaries will get more or less money on their Social Security benefits moving forward. Now, right now, it is a very early indicator because the COLA is actually only calculated off the 3-month average of the CPI-W for the third quarter of the year, what I like to call Cola time, my favorite brand of cola, or pop, I guess, for my Midwest friends out there. But for today, it will give us a good early baseline for how 2025 benefits could end up shaping up. And for January, the CPI-W showed an inflation rate of 2.9%, which is going to be a pretty big step down from where it was in December at 3.3%. This means that when we look at the potential 3-month average for the CPI-W, because that is the number that ultimately matters, the CPI-W 3-month average is at 3.07%, which would also mean that folks on Social Security, if the COLA was taken right now, they would actually get a pretty nice monthly increase of $57.05 in 2025. This is because the national average Social Security benefit for January, which was a nice increase here, went up to $1,860.23 on average. So with the additional $57.05, that would mean that for 2025, it would bring the average Social Security benefit at that rate up to $1,917, or an increase of $14.71 from where it would have been at the end of December. So a pretty good increase, kind of like winning a little mini lottery every month, not a jackpot, but maybe a scratchers for Social Security. But also, it is going to help dramatically that the fact that the average Social Security benefit for January, after the COLA increases came into fact, got increased from $1,844 to $1,860, which is keeping that potential COLA for next year even higher, even if that percentage is lower. Now, lastly for today, let's look at one of my favorite metrics of inflation. It is kept by the BLS, again, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as a parallel and really a more accurate depiction of how American senior daily costs of living are actually inflating, is something called the CPI-E, or the Consumer Price Index for the Elderly. And again, economists never really great at naming stuff, but they're kind of short and to the point, I suppose. And this is a metric that is specifically designed to reflect the costs that seniors have on a day-to-day basis. Even though Social Security benefits increases are based on the CPI-W, which not for nothing is almost always lower than either the general inflation numbers or this CPI-E. The CPI-E is again going to be a much more accurate depiction and will give us an idea of how much those costs for seniors actually are going up, and we can compare that to the CPI-W where they are potentially going up too. And we'll see that here in a sec. So when we look at the CPI-E, the inflation rate for the month of January 2024, we can see that it shows the costs that seniors experienced was at 3.5%, which unlike either the CPI-U or the CPI-W is in fact going to be above that 3.2% COLA increase that everybody got in January. Furthermore, when we look at the 3-month average, it means that the CPI-E is at 3.6%, which would mean that in order to more accurately reflect the costs that seniors have, the average Social Security benefit in the US would have needed to gone up by $66.99, which would make the average Social Security benefit, if the CPI-E was used, for a COLA at $1,927. So we can definitely see there is a real dollar difference between the expenses that seniors have with the CPI-E and the expenses that they're getting compensated for CPI-W. So overall, looking at where inflation is going, especially when we focus on seniors, we can see a couple of things. First is that the way benefits are being calculated for seniors is not really accurately keeping up with the cost that they face, and that is not even a surprise at this point. And the problem with it is primarily the DNA of how the yearly Social Security benefits are actually calculated. Second is that the inflation is dropping at least momentarily, primarily, in fact, basically 100% of the drop is because of those drops in gasoline prices that are enough to compensate for exactly everything else going up and a little bit on top of that. But the problem with this is obvious. I mean, gasoline is a pretty volatile price. That's why it's oftentimes stripped out, because we have seen year over year the cost of gasoline has wild swings up and down, and when it swings back the other way, so when it goes back up wildly, primarily, when the US stops producing so much at some point in the future, probably after the election, then all the other costs are going to get caught up. And then lastly, looking at the discrepancy between the CPI-W, which is the COLA, versus CPI-E, which actually reflects the cost that seniors have, it is really truly kind of shameful that our older friends and our older neighbors and our retired family members are continually having their finances undercut because, the way they are calculated. Now, part of me feels like this is probably done by design, especially considering the already financially shaky Social Security system, but there is no two ways around it. We just have to find a way to take some of that money that we are spending near and abroad and put it back into Social Security and the Medicare trust funds so that, everyone has it in the near future, and hopefully it's more available in the far future. But again, that's for another video. So that is it for today, and this has been Michael's Matters, and I really hope that you found this video interesting or helpful, or maybe even useful. And if you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe, because it does really help the channel to grow. And of course, we are so thankful for that. Thank you. But also because you can get updates when our newest and most informative videos become available. So for Michael's Matters, I'm Michael, hoping that you take care of yourselves, take care of others, and have a happy, healthy